percent Pentecost. I make myself sick.
This week it's
I pulled down a 38. It was only about that Tom Thumb.
All right, brother, you want to open us up?
Well, we got everybody here?
we got
Got four.
Yeah. We need to get Mr. Carpenter's attention.
Mr. Carpenter.
Hey, Mac, y'all ready?
You ready to go, Karen? If you would please stand and join us as we say the pledge and have an invocation. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord, we thank you for another day. Lord, we thank you for giving us the ability to come together, Lord, to try to take care of some business for Walton County and the people who live here. We pray that you'll just give us the peace and the discernment to make good decisions. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Real quick before we get going, if you haven't already done so, please either silence or turn off your cell phones. We can minimize distractions. And I'll say this just because I like to say it sometimes. If we don't get through by 9 o'clock, we're going to shut down and go home, and everything will be moved to the next agenda. But I don't think we'll have that problem tonight. So, Mr. Carpenter.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we do have a couple of announcements. We have two items, one legislative and one quasi-judicial, where we are requesting a continuance. Should we address those now?
Let's get the minutes out of the way first. I missed
Okay.
those. Everybody should have had an opportunity to read the minutes. Do we have any questions, or do we need a motion and a second?
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now it's your turn, Mac.
Thanks,
Sorry
sir.
about that.
Item number one, the farmer's market ordinance is still being reviewed by the Design Review Board, so we would request that that be continued to November 9th, 2017, at 5 p.m. in this location.
Okay, we need a motion and a second.
Make a motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. And then number three, the Mall Bridge LLC. The applicant has requested to continue this item to next month's meeting, which would be November 9, 2017, at 5 p.m. In this location.
Commissioners?
Do we have a limit on how many continuances they could have?
Mr. Carpenter?
Typically, it's three before we'll table
We've
it.
only got two, so.
We've got two, so
Okay.
this would be the second one.
All right, I'll make a motion that we continue.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. The first item on our agenda now would be the Herons Crossing Small-Scale Amendment. This has been reviewed by Rita on behalf of Cole Inc. It's been submitted by Dunlap and Shipman. They're requesting to change the land use from residential preservation to neighborhood infill on approximately 1.02 acres. It's located just off County Road 30A in Herons Crossing and is identified by the project number or parcel number in your report. We'd like to request that the staff report be entered into evidence.
Accept it.
And the applicant is here to make their presentation.
We would like, first is, are we, there are some people missing from the board. Are they coming, or is it going
No,
to be
this
just
is
the
it
four
for
of us?
tonight.
Okay. We need to, as a matter of business, do they have to have a solid 4 vote to pass a vote?
I don't think that's the case right now. Not for the planning commission to move it to PCC.
Okay. Okay. We were asking in the interest of our client whether or not they wanted to ask for a continuance if we had to have a solid 4 vote to pass. And I don't know that he's been able to get a hold of them. So tonight, what we are, I don't know, is it, it's not hooked up. Tonight, what we're talking about is a small scale amendment on a piece of property that is off of Herons Crossing Road that is located just south of 98 on 30A. I need to figure out where this plugs in. My apologies. Give it a minute to think about it, I think. There we go.
Acres, and here it's 1.02 acres.
The property,
You notice that?
there we go. Herons Crossing Phase 2, the small scale amendment. The small scale amendment, presently that property, there's 2 half-acre lots that are just about half-acre lots that are designated as residential preservation. And as you can see by the map on the screen, the location, you can see that if you look carefully, you can see that there is a subdivision on the north side of that road that is Heron Crossing, the Phase 1. Our client purchased the property that's to the south for the sole intention of creating townhomes on that property, and that will be a part of the overall community of Heron Crossing, creating one homeowners association to manage and maintain that subdivision. He owns a majority or a good number of lots in the Heron Crossing on the north, and he has another person involved who's also interested in being a part of that community. So this is to create consistent development in that particular area. Originally, in 1996, when the MPA maps were adopted, that property was designated residential preservation. Over the years, some of those properties were amended to village mixed use for various reasons, all of which were approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Noted on the north side of that property is infill, and on the south side of that property it says residential preservation, and it calls it out as the Emerald Coast RV Park. The property to the south in 1992 was acquired by the state and became, along with over 1,000 acres, by Topsail Hill State Park, the preserve. And it involves and it includes RV campgrounds, cabins, some commercial uses, stores and things. It's a beautiful park. If you ever get an opportunity, you should go see it. But it is not a undeveloped piece of property. It has some pretty nice development on that property. So the land uses in the area, that as you can see, there were some big pieces of land that were not developed. And around that, and especially on the other side of 30A, there was some infill development, subdivisions already platted out at much smaller than 8 units to the acre, and some that were designated as conservation and or agricultural lands that were later purchased and changed to village mixed use. So this is the subdivision on the north side of that road. You can see they're fairly small lots. VMU develops out at 12 units to the acre. And if it's a small enough piece of property, they can develop it without having to do mixed use, in which case that's what's happened in this neighborhood. The Topsail Hill State Preserve, which is in the compatibility analysis that was submitted, shows some what they allow on that property. And so what's interesting about it is it allows for as I said, picnicking areas, camping, boating, some sailing, some cabins, and then they have environmental programs and some other outbuildings on that property. So it's active area. The land use on that property, as you can see by the map, is surrounded predominantly very closely by village mixed use. And when we do a compatibility analysis, what we look at is that what the surrounding use is, what they're currently doing on that property, and what they're allowed to do by the land use category designated on that property. Because the surrounding uses to the north is VMU and some infill, and VMU to the east and conservation to the west and to the south. The VMU allows a mixture, an amalgamation of density and intensity, 12 units to the acre and 200% FAR. That means that if you had 1 acre of village mixed use instead of it being allowed 43,560 square feet of intensity for non-residential uses, it would be allowed over 80,000 square feet for that same 1 acre. So residential preservation being nestled into that intense land use category is inconsistent and not very compatible. And it's just from that, that has happened over people coming in and doing changes over time. When now we have an owner who would like to make all of that consistent within that neighborhood. So what he plans to do, and we're really getting down, just kind of a quick overview and leave it open for questions. The development will be, or we are hoping to have, and you'll hear that a little later in the evening for our major development order, will be 8 townhomes, a very nice development, and it will have amenities which will be utilized by the entirety of that subdivision because they're going to incorporate it into one homeowners association. So now you have a nice mixture of uses, which is anticipated by VMU, for some multifamily being townhomes and some single-family homes on those individual lots. They are not proposing any commercial, not asking for any, and will most likely have some restrictions in the neighborhood not to allow commercial within that residential neighborhood. And it'll butt up nicely against a park, which will allow the people to take advantage of the amenities, but as well be in close proximity to a lovely state park that provides all of the other public access for them. The small-scale amendment is consistent with our comprehensive plan, our land development code, and the future development of this property on this street. It's consistent development, and that's what we're asking for, is a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to move it forward with an approval for the small-scale amendment to go from residential preservation to neighborhood infill, which will allow up to 8 units to the acre on the 1.02 acres of that property.
Yes, sir.
Is there access through that property to the state park?
It's right around the corner. Like
So
when
you
you
gotta
come
go-
off of
okay,
30A,
okay.
it'll be Heron Crossing, and that's the access into
Y'all
the
just,
development.
y'all just will butt up to
We
it?
just butt up against
Okay,
it. Mhm.
all right.
And I don't think there's any easements that go to it on that property, and I don't think they're proposing any easements
Okay.
to cross into it. But because it is right adjacent, I don't.
Probably wouldn't be allowed by the state.
Well, like you just said, they
There's
have the amenities, and I just thought, how do you get to it? Okay.
Yeah, the state has an area for you to come in through right off of 38.
Right,
It's
right.
just
You
south.
gotta pay
Yeah.
them to get in there.
Yeah.
They don't want us walking over.
That's the back door.
Yeah. So this change would allow, 'cause I guess currently you could have, 2 houses built in there?
Yes, sir.
And so you're going to 8 residential units from 2.
Yes, sir.
That's not a great deal of traffic, I understand that, but there's a big concern on 30A, anytime you start increasing traffic and how it's going to be handled and dealt with. I didn't see, is there a traffic analysis in here? in our
There is a
packet?
traffic, the small scale amendment and the major development order are running concurrent, so the traffic analysis
Is
is
in there?
predominantly
Okay.
with the major development
Okay.
order.
What did it show?
It's typical for any traffic impact for 8 townhomes. It's a very low key.
Right.
They most likely, and I would get John to speak to that on the traffic analysis. There's a potential they have to pay some mitigation, but the road is pre-existing, and so they're not going to have improvements necessarily on that road except where they enter the driveway.
Are there sidewalks on that street?
There's sidewalks, I think, on the north side of the street, and we wanted to maintain that particular structure because those are where the single-family homes are.
Right.
Because when you come into this development, there will be a parking area, the townhomes will be on the site, and so the parking, to have additional sidewalks on this side when they can just cross over and get into the amenities it seems a little excessive.
Okay.
No, excessive, I'm not saying the right word.
It probably wouldn't be functional to put a sidewalk over.
Not as functional, yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I would just like to speak to, normally when you're looking for consistency in development, we would normally ask to change the property to something like the adjacent property, which is village mixed use. There's a lot of reasons that we didn't ask for that, and the majority of which is in the present future land use element, there were location criteria and size like criteria for village mixed use. We are not presently allowed to add on a small parcel to a larger VMU node, and infill is the next category available. Okay?
Commissioners, any other questions for the applicant? All right. Jeff Talbert.
Good evening. How you doing?
Doing well, and you?
Doing well, thank you. I just wanted to come up and I'm Jeff Talbert, Talbert. I had some concerns about the compatibility of changing this land use to neighborhood infill. This is not nestled within a part of the park that overlooks a lake or Music Flatwoods or something nice. This overlooks the ranger station. This is a state park that's one of the busiest in the state. Everybody with their RVs, every person who comes in to go to the beach, they pass by, and they would be passing by right behind where this building is proposed to go. It doesn't seem to me that that is what you would want to look out at, over 100,000 people coming in a year, or them, to be looking out at townhomes right just feet away. And that is really all I got.
Do you think, let me ask you a question real
Sure.
quick. Do you think that having, if you look at, I guess, recent history in South Walton County of development and building single-family homes, 2 5,000 or 6,000 square feet homes would be preferable to a townhouse there
In this case, I think it would be. I understand. I didn't get a chance to watch the commission meeting from Tuesday, but I understand that there is a residential preservation category 2-1, 2 units, and that I was looking at that as
There's not currently.
right,
No.
right. I didn't know if
Right.
that's going forward or what, but that would to me seem more preferable to have there. It fits with the whole houses that would be across the street, and it wouldn't be as imposing on the state park, because that's the business end of the state park. That's not the preserve. I mean, I used to work out there. I used to stare at that lot
I would think
for
it would be
days.
preferable on the business end than on the preserve end of the state park.
I'm sorry?
I would think that this would be preferable on the business end of the state park than the preserve end of the state park.
Sure. I don't disagree with that. I mean, you wouldn't be looking out at RVs coming in and out at all
Right.
times,
Right,
at
but
the end of the day.
that's the developer's problem, trying to sell something, not, I mean,
Right, but I'm trying
Yeah, I
to
understand.
make a case
Okay.
here for not changing it as it is, looking for another option, and still being able to develop their property. 'Cause I'm not trying to stand in any way of any development. I just how I see it, how I want to see on the edge of these state parks and in these natural areas, that we don't cram as many people as we can in.
do you live in that area down there?
No, I live off Mac Bayou. I used to work at Topsail.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and like I said, I used to stare at that piece of property out the ranger station window every day.
Okay.
So,
Anybody else have any questions for this gentleman?
thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Talbot's the only one who signed up. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak?
It's Daniel Cole, and I am the owner of the property. I just wanted to comment on that. Actually, the back of the property, there's about a solid 30, 40 foot of trees, so you can't even hardly see the park back there.
There'll be a good buffer back there
Big,
between.
big time.
Okay.
And then as far as compatibility goes, the homes across the street, I own the lots across the street as well, and the houses are going to be around 1,800, 2,000 square feet. And that's the same approximate size of the townhomes.
Okay.
So everything would be compatible.
Okay.
So, did y'all have any questions?
Commissioners? Don't see any. Thank you.
When are you planning on doing across the street? Are you gonna do that next?
Probably pretty much simultaneously, but it's
Okay.
single-family homes.
Okay,
They're just like cluster homes where this is townhouses.
right, okay.
So,
Okay. Anybody else? Staff, you have anything else? No? Commissioners?
I don't have a problem.
Okay, we need a motion.
I move we accept the amendment.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
We have a second. Karen, did you get, who did those? You don't have a lot of choices tonight, do you? Okay. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. That brings us to the quasi-judicial section of our agenda.
Anyone who anticipates testifying on any of the remaining items, if you would stand and raise your right hand.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will provide to this board will be the truth?
I do.
Okay, and I think we had some stragglers there, so, but whenever you come forward, if you would, state your full name, spell your last name, and state that you've been sworn in. And if you miss the swearing in, we can swear you in whenever you come up.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Heron's Crossing Phase 2, item number 4 on our agenda. It's a request to approve by final order. It's a major development that's been reviewed by Rita Banignati, and she will introduce the project.
Good evening, Rita Banignati for the record, and I would like to enter my staff report into evidence.
It's accepted.
This is major development order application submitted by O'Connell and Associates. This development order application is requesting to develop 8 multifamily unit residential development on a 1.02 acres, subject to approval of the small scale amendment that we just heard a minute ago. This project is located on the west end of 30A on Heron's Crossing. The TRC heard this project on September 6th and did not have any objection, recommended approval for the project. There's no code violation on this parcel, no public comments. We did not receive at the time of this report. The planning department does not have any outstanding comments. Environmental department does not have any outstanding comments except the 2 conditions to submit the NPDES report and stormwater self-certification before construction. Engineering department does not have any outstanding comments except that it does not meet the transportation concurrency, so they will need to pay a proportionate fair share in amount of $6,570, which is in the conditions. Fire department have a few conditions that is listed under the conditions of approval. And we have reviewed the compatibility analysis, which was basically explained during the SSA summary, and that would conclude my summary. And I
One
would
quick question for you. And this is what we just got done talking about, and I think it's just a typo, but on the agenda it shows 0.84 acres. This should be 1.02.
Yes, it is 1.02. The 0.484 was coming from the GIS, and that was my error. I should have
Well,
used
the
the
county
1.02.
records show that property as being 0.84 acres.
Yes, the county GIS shows, the survey shows 1.02.
No, but the
Yeah.
county records, if you go to the tax site, shows 0.84. Which is it?
And I believe the applicant can explain.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Best available data is the survey. The survey shows 1.02 acres. That is the correct acreage. Our GIS is our primary determinant, but we always look to the survey for best available data. Whatever the survey says is what we have to use.
All right, fine.
Any further questions to me?
Anything else for staff at this time? Nope. Thank you,
The
ma'am.
applicant is here to answer any
Okay.
additional questions.
Good evening. My name is John Nash with O'Connell and Associates, NASH.
And Mr. Nash, you were sworn in, right?
I was. Y'all sort of gotten a summary of what the project is. I think we understand what that is. I'm here to answer any questions you have and to tell you that we've met all the conditions of the Land Development Code, minimum requirements, and the Walton County Comprehensive Plan. You had a question earlier about traffic. I'm willing to address that now. There's, as you said, there's some traffic mitigation. There's a few trips, I believe it's 4 that are added. In this case, it's a strange intersection because there's 3 different sections of roadway that get impacted by those trips, but it's a relatively slight number of increased traffic on that road, and they're obviously willing to pay the traffic concurrency for that.
Okay.
In terms of stormwater, we're treating stormwater and attenuating stormwater in the back of the lot. We meet all the requirements for that. We meet 25-year storm with 100-year the availability to discharge a 100-year storm without ever topping the pond. Other than that, I'm
Where's
not
that
answering any
discharge
questions.
to?
It discharges into the state park. The state
Okay.
park's stormwater management system's behind there, and we discharge at a lower rate than the previous, the precondition. So,
Okay.
no increase on that. You asked earlier about sidewalks. We do provide a sidewalk on our side that mainly gives access to the amenity area. If you see over here, there's an amenity area on the west side.
Be interior, not on the roadway.
It's a little bit off the roadway, but it's intended for the community to be able
Right.
to access the pool area.
Okay. Makes
Other
sense.
than that, any questions you've got, I'm happy to help answer them.
Commissioners, anything? Don't see nothing.
All right, thank you.
Commissioners, I do have one question for the applicant. We've heard discussion about this being a benefit to the park and the park being an amenity for this particular development. How do people get there from the development side?
Go around.
From my understanding, the only available option for them to get to the park is to go to 30A.
Through the park entrance, I would think.
Through the
Are
park
we gonna have to
entrance.
drive there?
Yeah.
Possibly, probably. There's no, as far as I know, there's no sidewalk on that side of 30A. We don't have any real option on our side of the road to get a sidewalk out to 30A because there's a parcel out to the east here before you get to 30A. That is presumably going to be commercial one day. But the other sidewalk on the other side of the road connects as closely as possible to 30A. But 30A, they would have to, I believe, cross the road to get to the walking path on 30A. Is that correct? I'm not certain about that, but I believe so.
Yeah. Although there could be any direct
But the
access.
stormwater management system for the park itself basically cuts off access through the back of this parcel, so
Right.
they can't, go past the guard shack and sneak in or anything.
You don't want to get in for free, so.
Exactly.
Mac, did that answer your question?
Okay. It would probably be nice, but
For the record,
Yes.
to get to Mr. Carpenter's question, I wanted to be clear. The amenities for the development for the neighborhood is within this development. It's a pool amenity, like an area for them to come and enjoy that. We were taught, when I did say that they would have access to the park, what I meant by that was in such close proximity you can't get any closer to the park than being in their backyard. So that we were saying they would have a nice, easy ability to get, they would have to go down to 30A, they would have to walk down to the entranceway and come in, or they would have to drive there if that was, or ride their bicycle. In this instance, the sidewalk is on the other side of 30A. They would have to cross over, go down and cross back over. Most of them won't. They'll stay on the right side of the road and go down to the park. And we are not able to give, I don't believe, and we would have to check, but I don't believe that, I don't think we can give them an access to the park that the park itself does not offer. That is not an entrance from the park.
Right.
So it would be really cool if everybody coordinated that way, but the state doesn't do that. They have one way in, one way out because you pay to go in. So that's my understanding of the situation. If that answers, if that is sufficient.
Okay.
that answers my question. There is one thing I would like for you to look at further,
Yes, sir.
and it's this section right here. Not necessarily right now, but before we get to the next meeting.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioners? Well, wait a minute. We had nobody sign up. Is there anybody who wishes to speak? Public comments? We'll close public comments. Commissioners? What's your pleasure?
Well, I move we approve it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Commissioners. Next item on our agenda is number 5, Lot 4, South Walton Commerce Park. Is request to approve a final order. It's a major development, and this has also been reviewed by Rita, and she will introduce the project.
Good evening. Again, it's Rita Banhuyedi for the record, and I would like to enter my staff report into evidence. The Lot 4 South Walton Commerce Park project is a major development order application submitted by Choctaw Engineering. It is a request to approve a development of a 12,000 square foot and a 7,500 square foot warehouse buildings on a 1.8 acre with a future land use of business park. And this project is located on Serenoa Road in the South Walton Commerce Park. On September 6th, the TRC voted to recommend approval of this project. There's no known code violation on the parcel. We did not receive any public comments. Planning Department has no outstanding comments. Environmental Department have no additional outstanding comments except the 2 standard conditions to provide the NPDES report and stormwater self-certification. Engineering Department, they did not send us the review summary at the time of the report, but they have given it to us recently, and they do not have any outstanding comments. And they meet the concurrency review, so they're good on that. Fire Department signed off on their review. They meet their technical review. Condition of approval, those environmental conditions that I mentioned, and there are no other outstanding comments or conditions. If you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
Commissioners? Not right now.
All right, the applicant is available for any questions if you have.
Do we need to accept the staff report on this one, Mac?
Yes, sir,
Yes.
please.
It's accepted.
Good evening. My name is James Armstrong. That is ARMSTRONG, and I have sworn in previously. If you have any questions, I'm all ears.
What is this warehouse? What's going to be in it?
Excuse me?
What's going to be in this warehouse?
It's going to be the owner is going to actually rent the units out. So it's going to. I know they're not going to have any hazardous materials or material like that, but other than that, it's going to be up to whoever the tenants are in the buildings.
Distribution type.
Yes, sir.
So no office space or?
No, sir.
Okay. Commissioners, anything else? You're getting lucky tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't have problems.
We'll open up public comments. We don't have anybody who's signed up. Is there anybody who wishes to address this issue? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Seems like that's what that land is set aside for.
Yep. Number 6.
Yes, sir. This is the Atchison Warehouses. Request to approve a final order. It's been reviewed by Bob Barante, and he will introduce this development.
I'd like to enter staff report into the record, please.
Accepted.
This is a major development order application submitted by Baker Engineers, LLC, on behalf of Chris Atchison, requesting approval to construct 22,500 square feet of storage warehouse. The project is located from the intersection of U.S. Highway 331 and U.S. Highway 20 west on U.S. Highway 20 for approximately 10 miles. and then you turn north on Trop Ranch Drive. The proposed parcel is approximately 660 feet on the east side on 2.41 plus or minus acres with a future land use of industrial. All comments have been addressed, satisfactory. It does meet traffic concurrency, and there are 2 conditions of approval, our standard environmental comments. The applicant's engineer is here if you have any questions, and do you have any questions for me?
Commissioners have any questions for staff?
None.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to the applicant's engineer.
Hey, I'm Michelle Baker with Baker Engineers.
Were you sworn in, Ms. Baker?
No.
Will you raise your hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you provide to this board will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
So this is 3 storage warehouses, 10 units per warehouse. No offices or anything like that. It's just storage units that are leased individually in the industrial park. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Commissioners, anything?
Nope.
You got lucky too.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have nobody who signed up to speak other than Ms. Baker. Is anybody else who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we'll close public comments. Commissioners?
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 7.
Thank you, Commissioners. This is Palms at Inlet Beach, a major development order application submitted by O'Connell and Associates requesting approval to construct 6 residential lots on approximately 1.11 acres with future land use of neighborhood infill and an Inlet Beach traditional neighborhood plan designation of residential with a maximum of 8 units per acre in the Inlet Beach plan. This was originally reviewed by Tim Brown, and he can't be with us here this evening. I'd like to request that the staff report be entered into evidence.
Accepted.
There are 4 conditions of approval. The first would be a $5,700 contribution to the sidewalk fund to buy out 190 linear feet of sidewalk on one side of the residential street. A condition that no parking signs be erected at the end of the proposed T turnaround on Road A, and 2 standard comments that we have in every development order. Prior to commencement of the development, provide a copy of the NPDES permitting and stormwater pollution prevention plan, and number 4, provide a copy of the environmental resource permit or self-certification for stormwater management system serving less than 10 acres. The applicant is here and will further describe what they're proposing.
Hello again, John Nash with O'Connell and Associates. This project is down in Inlet Beach on Walton Magnolia Drive near Walton Lakeshore Drive. It's in Inlet Beach Neighborhood Association Plan area. It's designated as 8 units per acre. It's underlined future land uses neighborhood infill. What we're proposing is 6 units. You can see the layout here. We had a community meeting on this project back in June, I believe. Met with everyone who showed up. The Inlet Beach Neighborhood Association was there, a few people from them, some neighbors around, and we discussed some of their concerns. We believe that we've done the best we can to address those concerns, and most of them, if not all of them.
You must have, because they're not here.
And you know that means something. I'll let you know that some of their concerns, number 1 was stormwater. Regarding stormwater on this project, we realize that there's some historic stormwater issues along that road. With that in mind, we designed an extensive exfiltration system that treats and attenuates the 100-year storm without discharging. So in effect, we've taken all of the runoff that comes off the site now, and we've we're containing it on site. Also with that, the Inlet Beach Neighborhood Association had a concern about building heights. They asked us to present to the owner that they would request that they reduce the building heights to 40 feet. We did that as we agreed to, and the owner graciously accepted and decided to lower the building height to 40 feet. So they seem to be pretty happy about what we've come through here, so we're happy about that. With regards to the sidewalk, as you can see over here, basically there's only lots on one side of the road. This is a very undulating piece of property. If you've ever been out there, it's hilly, which is odd by the beach. But so there's some grading on the right-hand side of the road that basically made it not practical to put a sidewalk over there. And since there's only lots on the west side, practically speaking, that's the only side they'd use the sidewalk on anyway. The beach access is almost immediately to the west. We've provided a sidewalk up on Walton Magnolia Drive to extend it as far as we can toward the beach access. When the parcel to the west develops out, we suspect that they'll continue that and give these people unimpeded access to that beach access. So with that, if you've got any other questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
I imagine you made them quite happy containing all that stormwater.
Well, they were happy to hear that.
Yeah, that's obviously the biggest problem down there, besides parking, but.
Well, we gave them a road with plenty of opportunity to park off-site.
Commissioners have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple. Those no parking signs are going to be at that T up there?
That's right. It's just the fire marshal's request in order to make sure no one parks up in here so they can get there.
Okay.
Safety for the turnaround.
So that is basically a fire marshal hammerhead.
Yes. It meets that requirement and exceeds that requirement in terms of being able to turn around.
Okay.
Just for my information, what is, you got that dotted line going through, zone 10, but what is that? Is that a flood zone area?
It is a flood zone. This is in the VE11 flood zone for the beach surge, in terms of surge flood that comes from the Gulf. In reality, we see no way that this could flood because the road is actually higher than that elevation and they'd have to wash out the entire road before it got up here. But with that in mind, all of these lots have been graded up to, I believe the minimum elevation is 16.25. So these lots are essentially 5 feet above the flood elevation.
So that's just lower elevation where the flood from the surge can get to.
Well, that's the line they've drawn through Inlet Beach in terms of how far the surge could get to, and then they sign an elevation of 11 in terms of a minimum structural height member of where a house would have to be built
Just
to.
out of curiosity, what is the elevation of that right there, you know?
Of the flood zone?
Right there, we're on your property.
Oh, it starts at, by the road, it's around 14, and it goes up to 26.
Okay.
So it's very undulating. There's a low point in the middle that gets down a little bit lower. That's a draw that goes to the little pond that's off to the east. But in terms of surge,
Are y'all planning to fill?
we've had to fill
raise it
that
up
somewhat, yes, and
Okay.
build a small retaining wall on that side in order to be able to get that road graded like it needs to be. Like I said, though,
And what,
with that in mind, there's a exfiltration system all the way down that road that catches all the runoff from our impervious areas and holds it in that exfiltration system. So essentially, that hole that was gathering the water now is in our exfiltration
these
system.
will all be townhouses here?
No, these are going to be single-family residential.
Okay. What size will they be?
I can't answer that, but I can, I can guess. But the lots are 5,500 square feet or something like that. They've got setbacks, so they've got a buildable footprint probably in the 3,000 square foot range, and they can be 40 feet tall.
So they're not going to be sleeping 20 or 30 people out?
Could be.
I wouldn't.
They could.
Okay.
But I can tell you that the maximum practical amount of parking they can get on these are 4 spaces if they have a garage. So that's going to limit, somewhat as to what they can
Parking
do.
has never been an issue for people who want to rent out a house.
I agree. With that in mind, we've got a 200 and something foot road that's not Walton Magnolia Drive. We purposely oriented these lots toward that interior road so all their driveways would come off of it to try and encourage people to do whatever they do on that road. They don't do it out on the main road that's going to block everybody else. And you can know right now, if you go down there and park, right by the road, it's hard to get by. It's a small road. In terms of traffic, I should address that. We did a traffic study on this. It's very similar to the Herons Crossing one we told you about, except for this one has available capacity, because the nearest concurrence each road is 98, and there's capacity there. And we had an additional 3 trips or something like that. Any other questions?
Commissioners? Not right now.
Thank you.
Commissioners, you should have found a one-page letter that we received today objecting to this particular project. Marilyn and Brent Goodman provided this letter. We didn't receive it in time to get it into your package. They raise a number of issues, I think, that have substantially been addressed by the applicant and by staff. They're objecting to the additional construction in the neighborhood in recent months. They're concerned about public beach access and the crowding of the public beach access to the west of this particular lot. One thing I would like to point out is there's a neighborhood beach access at the other end of South Walton Lakeshore, right up against the Bay County line, that's been improved by the TDC. It was paid for by EBSCO Development as part of the approval of the Lupin Beach PUD, which is immediately south of this particular development on the south side of South Walton Lake Show. That has not been constructed yet, but that is an active development order, and we expect that it will be constructed. So we don't see the beach access as a concern, because there is a very little used neighborhood beach access immediately to the west, and there's a very large public beach down to the south there. But that was the gist of those comments.
I'm going to ask you this, and I know the answer, I think, but in developments like this, and this is not disparaging this development, but when you build on that beach in these areas, the tendency is to build a big rent house where you can pile as many people as you can in there and rent as, make as much money as possible. Is there any way the county can try to avoid that happening? Because in this area, just like these other residential areas where you have these huge monster houses, it's a problem, because you may have room to park 2 or 3 cars at that house, and they'll end up with 20 people in this house with 15 cars there.
We recognize the problem, and this board made a recommendation
Right.
when we went through the comprehensive plan amendment
Right.
process to get Matrix to take a look at that particular issue. That was acknowledged and also approved by the Board of County Commissioners when they voted to transmit Phase 2 of the comprehensive plan project this past Tuesday. We are going to have Matrix look at that. It will not affect this particular development.
Right.
However, we are very concerned about the large rental houses and this board's direction and the Board of County Commissioners' direction to come up with some standards to address those kinds of things.
Right. I mean, it just gets frustrating when you have, citizens that complain rightfully about a lot of development, and they'll complain about a bed and breakfast that has adequate parking, but they can't complain about a house that's built with the capacity to sleep 20 or 30 people with only 2 parking places, because it's a single-family residence. And I know that you're aware of that. I just wanted to
Yes,
make a
sir.
comment.
And we certainly acknowledge your comments and respect those, and we will be working to develop some standards to address those very things. One of our constraints right now is the Florida legislature periodically chimes in and preempts local governments from addressing single-family rentals, short-term rentals. We continue to address that through our trade associations at the legislature during the Legislative Policy Committee meetings.
and we hope to get some traction. Certainly in the last legislative session, there was a bill that would have relaxed those preemptions.
Right. Well, I mean, the developers have a huge lobby.
Let me add a little bit to that. It's probably neither here nor there. I live next to a house that rents about 25 people. Not only parking, but the pool. You get 25 people in the pool, you can't hear the 6 o'clock news in your house. So, I mean, I don't know how you would remedy that.
We recognize that, but we don't approve houses that will sleep 25 people. Right. What we approve is a house that has a certain number of bedrooms.
I don't know how you would remedy that, but it causes, I mean, it's not just parking.
Oh, yes, sir. Just the sheer volume of occupancy.
Right. And there's nothing currently that can be done, but I think just keeping the conversation going and making sure developers as well as others are aware that we need to figure out a way to address that problem.
And one of those ways that we think may have some traction is the way traffic concurrency or a traffic analysis is performed. There are several methods to perform a traffic analysis. And typically we have used a single family home, bedroom size, as that methodology. It can be done on square footage. It can be done on occupancy. And occupancy very well may be our best opportunity to address that.
Is that something that you can come back later to address? They come in here and get approval for building single family residences with 3 bedrooms, and you approve it based on that. And a year later, that house is built and they're sleeping 25 people in it.
That is a problem right now that we cannot control.
Right.
Yet.
Is that a way, is that something that, what you're talking about, you can come back to occupancy?
On future approvals, I don't know that we can go back retroactively.
No, I understand that, yeah. But on future projects that come to us, you would be able to look at that development after it's built to see what's actually occurring.
Well, in my mind, how we would approach this is we would get an occupancy statement, a maximum occupancy statement from the applicant.
Right.
At the permit stage.
And that's what they're authorized.
And that's what we base the traffic analysis on for a development. But we're searching for the right tool to
I know
address
you're working
this
on it,
problem.
Mac, and I appreciate the hard work that you're doing.
And Mac brings up a good point about, we are constrained
Right,
very much
I
so by
understand
the
that.
legislature and what they've done.
I understand. I just think it's a conversation we have to keep going and trying to figure out creative ways to address, because that problem is not getting any better in South Walton County.
And what we're experiencing, as you very well know, is we approve a single family home and it operates like a small hotel.
Right, exactly. Without adequate facilities.
Without that kind of licensing or
Right.
the adequate facilities.
That's right.
And we're unfortunately stuck with those impacts, at least for now. But that is we are very sensitive to that. We think it's very important for our county to try to address those kinds of things, and we've gotten support both from this board and from our Board of County Commissioners to move forward to try to identify some standards that we could apply that would address this very thing.
Okay, well, I appreciate it, Mac.
Thank you.
I think we got to take some action on this one, Commissioners. Did we already vote?
I think we have public comment.
Oh, public comments, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You didn't sign up, but go ahead and come up.
I can sign in, but am I not allowed?
No.
I actually hadn't planned on speaking. My name is Mary Jane Walschmidt, WALDSCHMIDT.
Were you sworn in?
Yeah, well, I raised my hand and agreed.
You need.
Okay, I feel good. My question is to the developer, they're not gonna go over 40 feet. Where's the 40 feet from?
They've agreed to that, yeah.
From where? So you're talking about from 14 to 26 feet. And it actually becomes very pertinent to me because I'm right behind it. So, I mean, I knew it was going up, but are they gonna go 40 feet from sea level? 40 feet from the 26? Are they gonna level them at? Are they going to?
There are 2 measurements of building height in the Land Development Code. The first measurement that we use is we start with the average pre-development grade, which could be 26 feet, depending on where on the property that this could be. And it's measured
From there,
vertically, depending on the style of roof. If it's a pitched roof, we're looking at the mean between the peak and the eave as that measurement point.
Okay, because that brings up another very big point. Just to the west of this development, it was called the Cottages at Inlet Beach. There's a house that goes up to 70 feet. Now, you can't go above, I think, 50. Is it 50?
Does this have to do with this development?
No, but it does, because I want to make sure it doesn't happen in this development what happened there, because it was the average of the roof. So the majority, parts of the roof are up there, and it goes like this. So the overall height numerically is within that.
If it's a pitched roof, it
No.
can exceed 50 feet to the peak, because the measurement is from the peak, the mean from the measurement, from the peak to the eave.
Okay, so what they've managed to do is the house goes like this. So the majority of the house is up here, and they're measuring it from here. Net, how tall is it going to be? How much is it going to block? I mean,
I don't have an answer to that.
40 feet is 40 feet from where?
From
Well, he's just answered that.
From the
Well, that wasn't
ground.
really quite the answer.
From the
They
ground.
don't know.
Yes, 40 feet from the ground, the average of the pre-development grade up to whatever style of roof they've got, and the measurement point based on Land Development Code's measurement methodology based on that style of roof. If it's a typical peaked roof like this,
right,
it's going to be halfway from here to there.
So
will be the measurement point, which means half of the roof will be above 50 feet if that measurement is 50 feet. In this case, it's going to be 40 feet, so some portion of the roof, if it's that style of roof, will be allowed to exceed that. Chimneys are always allowed to exceed that, because the building code requires those to exceed roof height by a certain amount.
And not only allows it, requires it.
Requires it, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioners? Need a motion?
We approve.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That was the last item on the agenda, but I want to take just a minute, Mac, to thank you and the staff. Y'all, you do it. We complain a lot. People out there complain a lot, but y'all do a great job. And you bring us the information that we need in a very difficult environment. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
You too.
I got something just run by you. I've been talking about people, how Bay County handles this. They do theirs based on safety issues. If you got so many people in there